So thank you for joining us today for our U46Engage webinar. It's okay to not be okay, surviving stress and anxiety in middle and high school. So our presentation today is brought to you in collaboration with the King County Health Department and our team of social workers. Thank you to our presenters today for joining us. My name is Carla Jimenez. I am the coordinator of family and community engagement in the district. I have a kindergartner and I have a high schooler in U46. And trust me, with both of my students, they have definitely experienced some kind of anxiety and stress in today's world. And so I'm anxious to hear what our presenters have to share with us tonight. Really need those tips. But before we move on to our presentation, I'd like to let you know a few items. The presentation today is being recorded. It will be posted on our U46Engage website at u-46.org/webinars. Today's comments and questions can be included in that Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen. Our presenter may ask also to interact and answer some of the questions. Please use that option as well to provide that feedback. We will have some time towards the end of the presentation as well to answer questions. In the chat box, we'll go ahead and share some main points and links to make sure that you have that open as well during that presentation. We do ask that you please do not include any identifying information, as this is a public forum and it is being recorded. Today's topic will explain, as I've mentioned, how do students cope with that stress? So, you know, our young people today are experiencing anxiety at this time. So you're not alone. And how do we know that? How do we recognize that anxiety? What is it that we do or we have to look out for that when our students are feeling anxious, and how do we address that? And also, how do we help them communicate that anxiety? And who do they communicate that to? What resources are available for that? Today, our presenters are, if you want to go to the next slide, Kate McCormick, and she is a licensed clinical social worker for the King County Health Department. And also joining us tonight is Mary Abbott, and she is our lead school social worker at U46. Thank you so much, ladies, for your time and your expertise tonight. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Ms. Jimenez, for inviting me tonight and for organizing this and for all your hard work. I'm really happy to be here. As Ms. Jimenez said, I'm a bilingual licensed clinical social worker. And I currently work at the King County Health Department, but I previously worked providing individual and family therapy at a couple different organizations. And I also worked providing individual therapy to students in schools, from students as young as 5 and up through high school. So I wasn't a school social worker. I was someone that came in from outside and just gave therapy within schools, but I got a chance to work with a lot of young people and a lot of great school staff. So I've done lots of talking about anxiety with lots of different kids. So thank you so much for having me here tonight. And I will let Ms. Abbott say hello and introduce herself.
Okay. Thank you. So as Carla said, Ms. Jimenez says, my name is Mary Abbott, and I am the lead social worker here in the district. And just a little bit about me, I have been with School District U46 for my entire life. I know that sounds kind of strange, but I was a student here all the way from kindergarten all the way through graduation. And then I obviously left for a little bit to go get my degrees. And then I came back as an intern in the school district in 1996 and then got employed. And I've been here ever since. So this is my 24th year here in the school district, and have always been a school social worker. I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of outside agencies over the years. I've worked with all age levels over the years, and most definitely have worked with students suffering with anxiety and depression for school-related issues, for home-related issues, or both. And I just want to big shout out, thank you to Kate for kind of bringing up this topic and and saying that, you know, they would like to bring some information to the district, because we know that with what has been going on in recent times and all the recent events that have occurred within the last 9 months, have been particularly stressful and difficult for students to understand, sort through how it's all made them feel, as well as dealing with the back and the forth and the in and out of school, and knowing that, you know, the intention was everyone was going to be coming back to school in January. We started having this discussion about how can we help kids, you know, have a safe place to talk about how they're feeling, because coming back into a school environment for some of you guys that have been out of school for 9 months or longer, well, 6 months at least, a little bit longer than that, is anxiety provoking in and of itself, even if you were not or minimally impacted by what's been going on. And if you have been impacted by what's going on, it's going to make it even more difficult, because you have residual anxiety and feelings about what has happened. So we really just wanted this to be acknowledging to you. We wanted to say we acknowledge that, and we understand that you must be feeling a lot of different things. So I was, again, thank you to the King County Health Department, to Kate specifically for volunteering to bring some of that information to you guys tonight. And then know that as a social work department and other professionals in the school, or counselors and psychologists are also there to help. So we'll talk about that at the end. So I'm going to pass it back over to Kate. We hope that the information that you get out of the presentation tonight is helpful in some way. You take something away that's going to be helpful for you. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Ms. Abbott, and thanks for being here. And so I will go ahead and get started. And so our first slide, of course, just kind of a visual representation of different stresses, right? So we have our person in the middle here who's an adult. So some of these are adult stresses, but I just like this picture of feeling really overwhelmed by a lot of different things, particularly like the news. And of course, maybe we would change out this megaphone to be a smartphone now. Maybe this is a little bit of an older picture. But it's just, as Ms. Abbott was saying, it's okay to not be okay. I think that's the first thing we really want to just acknowledge, that this has been a really, you know, historical 9 months in a way, right? No one has ever lived through a global pandemic of this size before. And that's caused so many changes and so many stresses for us. So I think the first step to sometimes to feeling a little bit better, right, is to just feel like, hey, I'm not the only one, and hey, I'm not alone. And even though this has been going on for so long, it's okay. If we're not used to it yet, or, you know, I'm sure we've had our months that were good and our months that were bad, or maybe it's been hard the whole time. We've all had our own reactions, but this has just been a time that causes a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety, just because of everything that has happened in 2020. And, you know, 2021 is starting off to be a little bit stressful too. So this is just kind of a funny meme that maybe you guys saw a long time ago. As you can see, we haven't even updated it since September, but we started off in January looking forward to the year. February, we're getting a little bit worried. March, we have our shutdown, and then we're all trying to deal with the shutdown. Maybe in June, you know, dealing in a not healthy way, and by July, August, September, we're just kind of down. So I thought that was a good visual representation, right? We don't even have it going on. I don't know if other people have seen ones where they've even continued it beyond September. But just trying to deal with what a challenging year it's been, with some humor. And another one, you're not alone, right? Everyone in the world at some level has been having to deal with this pandemic and has had their life change in some way. Just thought this was another one, a funny one. Everyone on the planet right now. Well, I'm going through a little bit of a rough patch. Maybe that was us in March. We thought, okay, we're going to be closed for like a month. And now here we are in January. And maybe things are back open to a degree, but we're certainly not back to the normal that we all are hopeful to get back to sometime soon. So one thing I also want to acknowledge about this is that, you know, for middle school, those of you in middle school and high school, you're going through a lot anyways. So you've got a lot of challenges. You're growing and you're changing. And you're trying to deal with school. And so you've got a lot that you're dealing with anyways. And now in addition to that, you're dealing with kind of these additional changes of the pandemic. So one example I think of is that I'll give, because we're in January in the Midwest. So we've got a lot of snow on the ground. So you're walking home and you walk across a patch of snow where the neighbor has had time to shovel it and they've done a good job and they put out some salt, right? And so you don't have to pay a whole lot of attention. You can just walk across that sidewalk, right? And then now we hit another house, neighbor hasn't had time to shovel it and they've let it pile up and it's gotten icy. And now all of a sudden, what do we have to do? So if we're someone who's privileged and able-bodied enough to be able to walk, we can still walk across that, right? But now we have to put some energy into it. We got to look down and see if it's icy. We got to pick up our feet, kind of pay attention to what we're doing. All of a sudden, it just takes up more mental energy, more physical energy. So I think that's kind of like the example I would give for our middle school and high school students and all of us. But you're doing it and you're doing the things that, you know, when we were young, we had to deal with too. But now you're like walking on a unplowed sidewalk. You're having to take up this extra amount of energy to figure out how to grow and be okay when there's so much stress in the whole community. So changes. So of course you've all lived through a lot of them, but I think sometimes it's important to just name it that one of the things that's been so hard has been all the different changes and the unpredictability of it. So change isn't bad, right? Change is a good part of life. And even stress is not bad. Sometimes we think of stress as being bad and we often use it as a term as if it's negative, but it is a necessary part of life. There can also be kind of a positive stress. Like today, I'm a little bit stressed or nervous about this presentation, right? But it's going to end up being a good experience. So sometimes we're stressed about positive things. We might be stressed about a new job, or we might be stressed about a new relationship, but those are all things that help us to grow. But what is really difficult is when change and stress are overwhelming. So when we feel overwhelmed by the stress, that can lead us to feelings of anxiety, and particularly when there are things that we don't feel like we have any control over, or anything that we can really prepare for. So if you've got a really big test, obviously all of your students at U46, so if you've got a big test and you feel really anxious about it, kind of what's a healthy way to cope with that, right? Maybe you do some studying, maybe get your friend to help you, maybe you talk to the teacher. You have some things that you can do to prepare for that test, and that will help you. That's like a healthy way to manage that stress. But if it's something happens and you can't study, maybe something happens with your family, but you still have to take the test. Now you just have this hanging over you, but you can't really do anything positively to control it. So that's just a simple example, but there's been so many things this year. Obviously, we have not been able to control COVID and what's open and what's closed and what our families are doing. And so all those things, when we don't have that control, that creates more anxiety. And that's for adults too, of course. All of these changes have applied to adults too, but I think we just need to be really acknowledging that for young people who are growing up in this, it really adds an extra layer of stress. Okay, and this is just another funny one. You've been from in-person school to virtual school to hybrid school, and timelines have changed, and for a while we were homeschooling and everybody was homeschooling and we weren't prepared to homeschool and maybe never thought we'd want to homeschool. And so all of you have just had to adapt, you know, teachers, staff, parents, and kids, you've all had to adapt to different things. And maybe you liked one way or another. So maybe you got used to the virtual and now coming back hybrid is really hard. Being virtual was probably really hard when you really wanted to see your friends in person. So that's just a lot of change. And again, that's not something that's ever happened for another generation of kids in this way, because we've never had a global, none of us have been alive to be through a global pandemic. Okay. And so we have our kind of formal definition of anxiety here. Anxiety is an emotion characterized by feelings of tension, worried thoughts, and physical changes like increased blood pressure. People with anxiety disorders usually have recurring intrusive thoughts or concerns, and they may avoid certain situations out of worry. So that's kind of our formal definition. Then I just put some quotes from kids I've worked with over the years. I'm just freaking out. I want to hide under my bed and never come out. So those are kind of simpler ways of talking about what we might feel like, things we might say when we feel really anxious. Okay, so we kind of got it from the definition, but one way to break down thinking about anxiety, it's a complicated emotion because it's emotional and it's physical and it's cognitive. So it's your feelings, your body, and your mind. So some of the things we might feel when we're anxious are restless or irritable. Some of the physical changes we might have are trouble sleeping, trouble falling asleep, waking up, not sleeping enough, anything around sleep disturbances, sometimes nightmares, stomach problems, headaches, and even up to panic attacks. And then cognitive, so our mind, persistent worries or troubling thoughts, or difficulty concentrating. So it's not that you necessarily have all of these in any 1 minute, right? But these are different things we might experience when we're feeling anxious. Okay, so then I want to actually ask Miss Abbott or Miss Jimenez if we can get some feedback from the chat. So how do people know, how do you know when you're feeling anxious? What are some symptoms or signs that you might have? How do you know? So you can just take a minute and think about yourself. How do you know when you feel anxious?
I'm looking. No, nobody yet.
No takers yet?
Nobody yet. I know for me, when I feel anxious, all three things happen to me at once. And I know oftentimes when I get anxious, I get super irritable. Oh, it says it's disabled. Oh, now we got some responses. We got fast heart rate.
Yeah.
Like my heart would explode when I have a stomach ache and begin to think over and over again about my problems or my stressors. Let's see. Another fast heart rate. Like, oh my, did I say like my heart would explode? A lot of heart stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what we've got so far. I know I also get embarrassingly sweaty when I get anxious.
Yeah, that was another one I was going to say, sweaty palms.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we might, our speed of our speech, sometimes we might speak really fast, you know, especially like a presentation if you're nervous. Some people might feel like they want to cry or scream.
Moody, like I can't breathe, I can't think straight.
Mm-hmm. Not a cognitive, so it's another mental one. Thoughts?
We have a comedian in the chat here because at first I think the chat was maybe disabled, and he goes, "I can't. The chat is disabled. It's making me anxious."
Oh no.
I bite my nails. Sometimes I play with my hair.
Okay, another physical one.
Tired, not want to leave. Tightness in my chest.
Yeah, thank you. So we really see how, and so there's a wide range of different symptoms, and they might all be a little bit different for each person. You know, Miss Abbott was kind of losing, these are the things that happen to me specifically. You know, some people get really flushed, maybe you're somebody who gets really cold. There's all these kind of weird or unique things that happen for each person. But again, that there is this physical component to anxiety. So sometimes when we feel, when we're really feeling it, it is really uncomfortable, right? It can even be uncomfortable physically in addition to those thoughts. So those are all really good ones. Thank you everybody for sharing there. Oh, I had the wrong slide up. That was supposed to be my conversation slide. So there's our person wondering how they're anxious, but you guys all did a great job already of sharing some of those. Okay, so stress and anxiety triggers for young people. So I know we had this for both middle school and high school. So we said kind of left it general with young people. And I feel like we use the word trigger a lot more. So you probably heard it. The way I'm using it right now is just thinking of an event that may lead you to feeling anxious or stressed. So just a few examples, of course, we had talked about already, tests, maybe conflicts. So since everybody's got their chat already, what are some other specific stresses for young people? So for our middle school and high school, what do you think, things that might be a little bit unique to you as young people? What are some of the things you're dealing with?
Feel free to put comments or make some statements about right now, because I think that definitely there's a lot of things as young people we get stressed out about, but not me anymore. I'm not considered young anymore, but then there's also like what's happening right now that might be very particular or different to what might be causing you stress. Feel free to be more specific.
Yes, now we have to worry about whether we have our masks, right? And do our masks fit right? And do we like the design of our mask? All things we never thought we'd worry about.
Too much homework.
Too much homework. Yeah.
Homework overload. Growing up and becoming responsible.
Yeah.
Stress about things that don't matter or past mistakes. Homework that people will laugh at me.
Yeah, all tough ones.
A lot of homework comments, and honestly, that I hear this a lot. I hear that there's a lot of stress around, you know, the homework load.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of stress around homework, right? We don't know how to do it. We got to manage our time. We got to find time to do it. It takes away time from other things we want to do. So I'm sure if we were able to ask you guys back specifically, maybe there'd even be some more specific things about homework, not understanding what teacher wants, maybe. There's all kinds of things that can be in that homework one. That's a big one.
Failing classes because the online format just isn't working for a student.
Yeah, definitely. And that comes back to our changes, right? That some kids enjoyed the virtual more, and a lot of kids prefer to be in person. All those are tough, especially when it's not a good fit, whatever's happening for you.
Not making new friends because it's harder now.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I had someone tell me that when they went to their class for the very first time, that they finally got to see their teacher in person. And they said, my teacher looks really different in person than computer. You know, didn't even really think about that. But same things with a lot of times kids keep their cameras off, so you don't really even know what your classmates look like.
Yeah.
For fear, the actual fear of getting corona.
Mm-hmm. Of course, yes, it's such a big one. Worrying about our families. Good. Thank you for sharing all those. Okay. So what do we do when we have a triggering event like that? So of course, I wish I had a magic wand and we could get rid of all those stressors, but we don't. We have to just do our best with them. And so one of the first things we do is we say, stop, notice, and accept, right? We all, as probably younger kids in younger grades, you learned about stop, drop, and roll from the fire department. So from the social worker, it's stop, notice, and accept. So we just take a second when we start feeling any of those kind of symptoms that we talked about. If we notice our heart is racing, notice those sweaty palms, right? Some of those other things, physical things, notice our thoughts are starting to race, that we just want to take a second. We want to stop and we want to get curious about it. Like, oh, whoa, my brain and my body are really trying to tell me something right now. What's going on with me? And that's okay to just stop and be aware that it's even happening. Because sometimes we are really pretty anxious before we even notice, right? So maybe if we start paying attention to it, we can even notice before the heart is racing that maybe we're starting to get a little nervous, because maybe your heart starts to race because you're breathing a little shallower, right? So there's all kinds of things around this. So it actually is really kind of a skill and a practice that you can develop to just pay attention to it and to stop and to just notice it. And then you notice that the first thing I said isn't to try to manage it. It's not to try to deal with it or to make it go away. It's just to accept it. Because if the answer was, when you notice you're anxious, you just tell yourself to stop being anxious, it'd be real simple. We could end the presentation right here, right? But of course, we're more complicated beings than that, and these emotions are more complicated than that. So if we sometimes the very act of like trying to stop it and trying to stuff it back down, especially with anxiety, that will often make you more anxious, because now you're like, well, I told myself to stop being anxious, but now I'm still anxious. And now what am I going to do? And now we're even off to the races on that. So really the thing is trying to slow it down, because anxiety is everything. Our mind speed it up, our heart speed it up, right? Those are such reflective, thoughtful comments that people put in the chat about how your whole body's just sort of accelerated in a way when you're feeling anxious. So we can use this with any emotion, but especially with stress and anxiety, we just want to stop and notice it and accept it. And accept it just kind of means being like, okay, wow, this is what's happening right now. And not getting into a mode of trying to correct it or trying to change it immediately, just sort of sitting with it. We sometimes say, we just want to sit with that emotion for a little while. And it is kind of it's definitely kind of a strange idea. And it takes a little bit of practice to just sit with it and say like, okay, this is what's going on with me right now. So this is another thing. So now once you've stopped, noticed it, and accepted it, another way to kind of get into that emotion and to think about it is to take your temperature. And you've maybe seen different ones of these. I like this one because it was bright and it showed up, but sometimes they'll make these an anxiety scale or other things. But this particular one, we have 1 down here as calm and relaxed, and we have 6 up here as angry and mad. And we have our other emotions here in between, and our different colors, blue up to red. Sometimes you'll see different versions of this, but the same, the idea, it's the same idea. This is one thing we can do while we're in this process of noticing what's going on in my body, what's going on in my mind, where am I on the temperature scale right now? And this changes throughout the day, right? So if you have a really big homework assignment in the morning and you have to give a presentation, you know, maybe you're up at a 5 and you're feeling really worried. And then maybe in the afternoon you're done with school and you get to watch TV, and now we're back down to a 2. So we float up and down during the day. So I'm going to ask again in the chat if you want to just put in, what do you feel right now, just for the practice of sitting with yourself and noticing. Hopefully we'll be at a lot of 1s, 2s, 3s. Hopefully nobody's too stressed right during this presentation, but just you can go ahead and put a few in the chat.
Hi, Kate. It's actually in the Q&A box, so please use the Q&A option to your feedback, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Q&A box. Thank you, Mr. Menes.
We always say chat, so we're so conditioned, but
yeah.
So we got 4, 4, 3, 3, 3, 4.
Lots of tired. Yeah, of course. Lots of tired at this time of night.
4 and 3.
Couple 3s. Okay, good. 3. Good. Okay.
But not bored with presentation, just a long day.
Yeah.
Number 4, number 2, 2, 3, 3, tired, but okay. So is that a 3.5? Yep, we can go with 3.5. We have a 5 here. So somebody is not feeling so calm right now. Yeah. Another 5, got a 3, we got a 1, a 4. 4, tired, not bored.
We got a thoughtful group that they're making sure to tell me they're not bored. Thank you, everybody.
2. 2. I don't know if this is going to be part of your presentation, so forgive me if it is, but when I work with kids a lot with using temperature scales like this.
No, please actually talk about that, because I put this in because I knew you worked with this specifically, so I don't have a lot more to say about it.
Well, not just with students, with adults, honestly, with anyone, with myself, because we know that everything starts with self-awareness. So I have to constantly do my own self check-ins. I ask myself all the time, like, where am I at? And I might not give it a number value, but I'm certainly giving it a, like, where am I at? I'm trying to check in and create awareness. And that's really what this is designed to do to help with anxiety, is to first ask yourself, where am I at? How am I doing? And then what am I going to do about it? You know, and there's a lot of different strategies and different things that you can do, whether it's something to self-soothe or something to distract yourself, or what support do you need? How do you need acknowledgement? Like, what do I need to get my number lower, essentially? And then put those things into practice. So even though you're thinking, well, okay, so I'm at this number, so now what? Well, that's the whole point of it. If you acknowledge your number, then you have to then take that next step and try to figure out, what am I going to do about that number?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks everybody for noticing that. And again, it is also that acceptance that, you know, if you're at a 5 right now, that's okay. Like, again, like a lot of people are at 5s. You're not the only one out there feeling that way, and that's okay. It's really understandable. Okay. So kind of moving into what Miss Abbott was saying, then once we've stopped, noticed, accepted, taken our temperature, then we are setting ourselves hopefully up to cope, manage, and thrive. So we can help once we've, but again, we don't want to move too quickly through that kind of accepting and noticing. And this maybe won't all happen even in the same moment. You might just have to sit with the fact that you're anxious for quite a while. We don't necessarily move right into wanting to manage things right away. But of course, we have different healthy ways to deal with anxiety, and I bet people have some. So now I'm really, I did a few slides right in a row here where I'm asking everybody to participate. So hopefully I'm keeping you awake. But one thing I like to do it's a practice that I started again that I did as a teenager and didn't do again until I worked at the health department during a pandemic, was I've started to keep a little bit of a journal, and I call it my pandemic work journal. So that's one thing I do. What are some other healthy things that people do to help cope when they feel stressed or anxious? Miss Abbott, what's a good coping strategy for you?
Well, I was going to say this. Somebody just put it in the chat.
Okay.
Drink wine, but no, I'm just kidding. That must be one of our adult members that are attending the presentation. Meditation, exercise, lots of walks, pet my dog, exercise, go for walks to refocus, exercise, draw, think positive, call friends, try to keep myself busy, watch a good Netflix show, breathing exercise, swim, warm bath, craft, call my friends.
Great.
Video games, Star Wars, practice mindfulness, take deep breaths, go for walks, walk, yoga, paint, take walks with the dog, spend time outside, read, get enough sleep, write, journal, eat.
Oh, I like that one too. Yeah, no, those are all wonderful.
Yeah, listen to music. You guys already know how to do this stuff. This is amazing.
Yes, that's great. I love that someone even said mindfulness.
Yeah, step away. Positive affirmations. Yeah. Eat fruit. Talk with my friends. So
great. Those are all great ones. So I'm gonna move on with talk with my friends, because that leads me into my next slide. Although if there's a few more in there, thank you everybody. Those are great. So one of our things, right, that we want to do, and this might not always be the first thing we do, right? Everybody, it sounded like, had different things they might do first. Pet the dog. Oh, losing my headphones here. Pet the dog, exercise. But if those things aren't working for us, another thing we might need to do at some point, if we're still needing some help, is to communicate about it. And so that's where we want to think about, who can you talk to and what can you say? Because a lot of times we have a habit, right, in the culture, and everybody does that. We want to say, how are you? And what's the answer? Good, fine, right? In most contexts, we are not expected to say, I'm really super anxious, right? Or I'm really super down. We certainly by middle school and high school, for the most part, with most people, we're kind of going to be in the habit of just saying that, that things are going fine, which again is fine in a lot of contexts. But that's why we need those special people, and we need to think about who they are for us. And they're probably different specific people for everybody, but a lot of times, hopefully parents, siblings, aunts and uncles, right? Hopefully we have people like that, people at school that we can communicate with. But then the trickier part is, even if we have people that we love us and that we know support us, what do you actually say? How can you actually explain what you're feeling and bring that up? What are different ways to do that? What are some of the words that you can say? I think that those things are really challenging when we're not used to having those conversations. So again, I want to ask our young people, what are words that you feel like that you could say to someone in your life if you're feeling like you need some extra support around your anxiety or your stress? You can either say who you would talk to, or even specifically, if anyone wants to be real brave and give us an instance of, like, what could you even specifically say?
I need to talk to you.
Yes, great. Mm-hmm. Right, that gives a person right away an indication that you're not just like wanting to chat.
I feel anxious and can't control it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're naming the feeling and naming kind of the problem with the feeling at the moment.
I'm not feeling quite myself right now.
Mm-hmm. Another good I feel statement.
Hey, can we talk?
Mm-hmm.
Can you help me with this? Can I talk to you about something?
Great, those are all great. And so open-ended, giving the person the possibility to respond. Yeah, wonderful. So I'm going to talk for a minute, Mary, but then if you see a few more you want to say, I'll give you a space in a second. So talking, of course, is a healthy coping mechanism, but there is, one of the things about trying to communicate is there always a little bit of risk, right? Let's say we want to talk to, our mom, and we go up and we say one of these great suggestions from the chat, and mom says, I can't talk right now. I have a work meeting, or I can't talk right now. I'm making dinner, or I'm dealing with your brother, right? And sometimes then we can feel really hurt, and now we feel hurt because we put ourselves out there in that moment. And so I think knowing ahead of time that if you can, you want to try to pick your moment. So try to talk to your person who's going to be your support person in a moment when they're not busy, if that's possible, right? And then also just knowing that doesn't mean that the person didn't respond. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't try again. That maybe we need to try to catch mom at a more quiet moment, or maybe we need to go talk to somebody else in that moment if we're not going to be able to get support right then. So that's knowing in your head that it's okay, that you might have to talk to more than one person to get the support that you need in that moment. And the other thing is to know, and I think we got a lot of really great suggestions there, but sometimes it is a little bit awkward, right? And that's okay. And if we're people who have a tendency to feel anxiety, not that anybody loves awkwardness, but we might like it even less than other people. But it's okay if you tell someone what you're feeling and they don't know how to respond to you right away. That's okay, because these conversations, we don't always have them all the time. So it does take some practice. But the important thing is trying.
Yeah, and I just want to throw in there that, it's really okay, and we really want to encourage you to make your needs known. Like, some of you are uncomfortable with self-advocating anyway. Like if you're struggling in math class, for example, and if you feel comfortable, you might ask your math teacher for extra help. You might not, or you might try to get help for math somewhere else. And it's the same thing with your mental health. I guess I just want to emphasize that please know that even though school is a place you go to learn math and science and social studies, it's okay to ask for help with what's going on emotionally. And if you're struggling with something, it's okay to know that that's part of what we're here to help you with as well. So make your needs known, and that's very acceptable. It isn't just about academics, I guess, is kind of the point I want to stress. Because if you're not able to be okay emotionally, it's going to be really hard for you to focus to learn.
Yeah, great. And I think I like that example with the math too. So if we're having trouble in math, you have to keep working at it, right? So it's not like you have one conversation with the teacher probably and you completely understand, I don't know, algebra. You have to kind of keep working at it. And maybe if you don't understand what the teacher says, you got to ask your friends. So sometimes mental health can be the same way, where it's not that we have one conversation that's going to cure our anxiety, right? It's kind of a constant journey. And sometimes, some days it's easier than others. So great. So thank you all for that. Okay, and then I did forget to ask in the beginning how many kids versus parents, but I'm sure we have some parents on here. So here's my slide, especially for parents, which is listen, listen, and listen, which I'm sure you do a lot already. And but one of the most common things we see in family therapy is that as parents, we have a real instinct where we just do not like to see our kids upset. And we want to fix stuff. And so we tend to, the error that is more commonly made, and this is not the case for everybody, but again, very common thing we tend to do is to want to jump in when our kid is uncomfortable or expressing that they're upset and try to fix it. But that's where we want to direct back to one of our earlier slides of the same thing, which is you need to stop and notice and accept. So we're going to use those same skills when we're listening. So if we're the parent or we're the school staff that a student is coming to and saying, I feel anxious, my heart is racing, these things we were talking about in the chat or in the Q&A, then our first thing is to just slow it down, right? And to slow ourselves down too, because maybe if they're telling you they're upset now, that's making you anxious. And so the best thing that you can do is just try to be a really active and focused listener, and try to stay away from jumping immediately to problem solving. Because often when our young people have a chance to talk something through, they're gonna, as we saw from our Q&A, they already know a lot of the skills. They know the things they need to do to try to manage that anxiety. And so just need to have some space to talk it through and to get that body to calm down, bring that heart rate down, And we know that listening is really good for that. So
And
that's
can I throw in a caveat? I'm
of
sorry.
course, yes.
But as a parent myself, and you know, I have a daughter who, you know, struggles with anxiety as well. And I've learned over the years, and then I've also learned in my practice that it's a lot of times just want to be acknowledged. And even as an adult, I just want to be acknowledged. I just want somebody to acknowledge what I'm saying and how I'm feeling. I don't want them to fix it. I don't expect them to fix it. I just want to be acknowledged. And I always tell parents when I work with them, by acknowledging your child's feelings, it doesn't mean you agree with them. So just remember that, because acknowledgement is very different than agreeing. So even if what they're saying makes no sense to you, or you don't even agree with what they're saying, you can still acknowledge their feelings without giving them permission or agreeing with what they're saying.
Yes, and the listening time is also, I was going to say, and this is a tough one for us parents too, and sometimes for us between our friends too. It's never the time to say, I told you so. So even if somebody's coming to you and saying, you know, I'm feeling really panicky about this, we'll use our test example again, about this test tomorrow. And the parent in their head is thinking, well, if you would have studied for that test a week ago, you wouldn't be anxious. Maybe now is not the moment to bring that part up. That's where we want to, you can tell your friend that, you might even be able to tell your kid that later, but it's not an emergency. You don't there's never an emergency to say, I told you so. That can always be something that can come back up later, or that at a more teachable moment, or that you just say to your friend, oh, I'm so frustrating that my kid put themselves in this situation. So try to just stay away from the kind of the lecturing and the I told you so when you have a kid who's feeling a really strong emotion in that moment. But I know that is all very hard, right? That requires us as parents to be able to manage our own anxiety and to be doing our own self-care. And Ms. Abbott did a great presentation on self-care for parents that you can go back and watch from a few months ago too, for a refresher on that. All right, great. So we are coming to the end here. I don't want to talk about this a ton, but I wanted to just give some basics. So I know some people are probably very familiar with this, but oftentimes people are not. So I did just want to clarify some of the terms that we use in the mental health world and the different roles. There are a lot more than this. So I'm sorry if I'm leaving off anybody's favorite mental health professional, but just sort of the big categories. The psychiatrist. When we say psychiatrist, that is the medical doctor. So that means they went to med school and then they specialize in psychiatry. And so they are typically going to be who's prescribing a medication if it's decided at some point that medication is needed. Sometimes a primary care physician and other people prescribe medicine as well, but this is one of the big titles. A psychologist is someone who has a doctorate in psychology. So they are also called doctor, but they have not gone to medical school. And they typically do more what we call diagnostic testing. So they might help if someone's having a problem that we're not quite sure what it is. They might be someone that is trying to figure that out through testing. And they also do a lot of other things in schools that I'm sure I'm not even really going to be able to do justice to. So there's often a school psychologist. And then we have social workers, and we are kind of which is me and Ms. Abbott, but we're kind of jacks of all trades. You find us in hospitals and schools and health departments and do lots of different things. So sometimes with a social worker, it depends on what their kind of work experience or additional training is. Sometimes they are therapists and do provide individual or group therapy. And other times within the school context, and Ms. Abbott can talk more about this, they're working with IEPs and running groups and I'm sure doing all kinds of other stuff. And then counselor is another term you'll hear. And there's licensed professional counselors, again, who provide individual or family therapy in a community setting or in a private practice. And then there's also counselors at school who I'm sure you're all familiar with the many different things that they help with. So those are just some of the different people in the professional help world that if it's decided at some point that a little professional help is needed for some of these problems of anxiety, those might be some of the different people that you would interact with. And just a last note about that, we're obviously beyond the scope of this presentation to decide when we need to pull in professional help because anxiety is such a big category of things. And so maybe we're someone whose anxiety can be helped by having some more good talks with our parents and getting a little bit more exercise and being more mindful. And then maybe we're somebody where we need a little bit more help than that. But of course, I'm always a big proponent of just whatever help you need, like it's okay. For the parent and for the young person, as Ms. Abbott said, we want you to express what you need and to work on getting the support that you need, because it's been a very, very difficult year. We're seeing a lot of people who are very anxious. And anxiety was a normal and common emotion before we went through a global pandemic, of course, too. So just that there shouldn't be this stigma around, oh, if you need to get some extra help or support from people in your life, that means that you're doing something wrong or that your parents are doing something wrong. We just all have a different makeup. And so mental health, I hope someday we really think of mental health care just as another piece of healthcare that we all need. So it has been so wonderful to be with you all tonight. I would love to hear your comments in the chat, and I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Abbott to talk a little bit more specifically about supports available within U46. And then I do think if we have time, we'll take some questions at the end as well. So thank you very much.
Okay, so Kate, this next slide, was that a link? Oh, we're gonna skip that one. I don't know what this,
oh, is this us too? Okay, so this one we added. These are also some.
No, the one prior. Are we not doing that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Oh, this is just a link to some additional materials that
Okay.
I put in there. Back to School Mental Health America. They just had some materials if anyone wants to go and look at those on their own. That's more like written material.
Okay, great. Yeah, and then I know these two next flyers are some offerings that Family Services Association of Greater Elgin are offering. So if anyone is interested, you can call them and find out about their coping with COVID-19 open group. It says here it started back in May, but it's from Tuesdays from 4 to 5, but it's Zoom. So you can give them a call and find out about getting the Zoom link and see if that's something that you're interested in participating in. And then they also have something that runs on Wednesday nights, also on Zoom, for kids from students from 13 to 17, and the topics change, but it's basically very much in line with what we're talking about tonight, you know, how to build your toolbox, how to build the toolbox of those different strategies that you need in order to cope with what's going on. So those are some other resources that are available in the community. And then the next slide is just some reminder numbers and texting options that you do have. If you're feeling like you really need to talk to somebody now, if your friends aren't accessible or your parents aren't accessible and you really need someone to talk to, and it's outside of the school day, these are all really good options for you. I know the one says suicide prevention. You don't have to be feeling suicidal to call that prevention hotline. You can call just to say you're feeling really anxious or sad or depressed or whatever, and you just need someone to talk to. Someone will pick up that line and you'll get to talk to a live person. Some of the other crisis lines have two options, whether you can call in or you can text. And specifically the crisis teen text is all texting. So if you're more comfortable texting, you just need someone to talk to, someone to just get that acknowledgement from, like we talked about before. That's a great option. And these lines are all 24 hours. So you can text or call them anytime. The suicide prevention line is not for texting. And then we have the domestic violence hotline up there. And that is for anyone that might just be in a situation where they're experiencing or witnessing domestic violence in their home. And unfortunately, we know that during these difficult times, domestic violence is up in homes. So we just want to make sure you have that information. So who can you talk to at school? As already mentioned, in schools, we specifically have school social workers, school counselors, and school psychologists. Those are all in your building. Where if you're a middle school student or a high school student in this district, these three people, or more than three of them, obviously, are in your building. But the high schools, we have 3 school social workers that see students by their alpha. Same with the school counselors. And then we have some school psychologists that are kind of split between buildings. But those are all people that you can have access to if you need to talk or want to get, express that you have some needs and need someone to talk to. So I think, was that the last slide? I believe so. Oh, sorry. So, so yeah, that's it. So do we want to ask questions? Are we going to do questions or are we going to wrap up?
If you want to go to the next slide, Kate. One more. Okay. So thank you, Kate. Thank you, Mary. All of this information is very informative and extremely helpful, definitely with my high school student. So please, to our attendees tonight, if you have any questions, go ahead and include those in the Q&A option located at the bottom of your screen. Please do remember, do not include any identifying information. Also know that you'll receive a copy of this presentation. You'll receive a recording and a PDF format, which will have any of the links that were shared today. It'll be available through that. In the email, you're also going to find a link to our survey, as well as when you close out a Zoom meeting today, it'll direct you to our survey. Please take a moment to complete that. It'll give, the survey also gives the opportunity for you to include any contact information in case you have any specific questions and you need us to follow up with you directly. Also, make sure to visit our U46Engage webinars page to see our upcoming webinars. We do have a few coming up, and so we'll be including those pretty soon. The link to our distance learning back to school website is a good one to bookmark. Here you're going to find the most recent information around our hybrid, our small school model, and also our distance learning tools and information. If you want more information about today's topic, if you have any other questions later on, please visit our wellness website here. The link is right here, and you may also use our Let's Talk tool. So again, many thanks for joining us tonight. Our next slide is going to show you a few ways to please stay connected to our district. So make sure you like us on Facebook. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. We have a YouTube channel. A lot of the recordings of our U46Engage webinars are available there. And also we have an app. So download our U46 app to find everything in one location. Please, if you have any questions, go ahead, include those in the Q&A option, and we can go ahead and take a few minutes here to answer those.
Yeah, we had just two so far. One was, is petting a dog good therapy? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. Wonderful self-soothing exercise, as well as, you know, where else can you get 100% love from? And I think that it's very calming, it's very soothing. So yes, definitely. And who can the grade school student talk to or have available talk to? So we do have a full-time social worker in every grade school. So that's a great place to start. And what can I do as a parent when my child is having panic or anxiety attacks during a test on Zoom? I feel like this has happened more often in this COVID time. There's a lot of different ways to answer that question, but definitely, most definitely, we know that if a student is having a panic or anxiety attack during a test, they're not going to perform well on the test. So most definitely, that's a conversation that you probably need to reach out to, if you haven't already, the teacher about, or the school administrator, school social worker, to talk about some other options, because there's no way to expect a student to perform well during a test when that's happening. Can reading good media for your well-being be considered therapy? As long as it's good, yes. Right?
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of stuff out there, and yeah.
I think one thing that we say when this counts for the health department information too, one of our things to really look for is if they say, if you do this one thing, it's going to fix it, then that's a red flag that is not the most helpful thing, right? Because everything is a little bit complicated. So just be mindful of that. Also, if there's a quiz that tells you that your personality is 100% one thing or another, those are fun, but don't take those too seriously either, especially if you find it online.
Someone's asking about, can a list of professionals be posted that further conversations can be had, because it's really difficult to find options because of overwhelming amounts of people experiencing anxiety. Yes, and I'm not sure what specifically that means in terms of a list of professionals, but for students, or for adults, if you're looking for professionals outside of the school setting, you either have to go through your insurance company or you have to be connected to community resources. And we do, I know on our website, our district website somewhere, we have access to community resources and places where you can access therapy and stuff like that. But so I'm not really sure. I don't know if that person is still on the call, if they want to be more specific about the list of professionals that they're referring to. What do you do when you catch anxiety too late? And then my child, okay, then we're talking about grades and stuff. So anxiety related to having poor grades. Maybe I can type on this one. Do you want to respond to?
Sure. So anxiety too late. So maybe I'm gonna guess here that maybe they mean like they're mid panic attack or something like that, that we're quite overwhelmed and we didn't kind of get it to an earlier point, and all of a sudden we realize we're really overwhelmed. And it is some of the same, you know, it's some of the same things. Like there's unfortunately no magic recipe for panic attacks, except to kind of even the same thing of just accepting it, like, okay, I'm having the panic attack, because it's that same thing when you try to start mentally telling yourself, stop having the panic attack. Now that's making you more anxious, right? Because now we can't control what's happening in our body. So sometimes when you've gotten to that point, it's just kind of riding it out and trying to come up with some, and maybe when you're in a calm place, you can come up with some phrases for yourself that you repeat. That like, if you're someone who has panic attacks frequently, it might be, you know, I've had this before, I'm going to survive, you know, and you'll have to kind of come up with something that's, you know, soothing to you, like this will pass. I'm going to get through it, because you're right. Yes. So for some folks who have more persistent anxiety, that will happen sometimes, and that's okay too.
The answer, she did say yes when that person is in panic. And, you know, I don't know if you want to talk really briefly about like a grounding technique, just, you know, helping kids, you know, understand how to use their 5 senses to just kind of take deep breaths and calm down to control their breathing, or if that's getting a little too clinical.
No, I think that's okay. I mean, do you want to do it real quick, Miss Abbott? Miss Abbott, let's pretend we're doing a grounding technique. What do you see in your home right now?
Exactly. Well, I just know that, you know, when kids come in the state of panic,
that's a great one.
Sometimes our first thing we tell them to do is just breathe, like calm down, breathe. And it, you know, it's a little bit more than just doing, obviously if they could, they would, right? So it's about trying to help them to learn, teaching them ahead of time. If you have a student that's prone to getting really anxious or even having panic attacks, teaching them before they have the attacks, or, you know, how to utilize grounding to work through the panic. Is the best way to go about it, so that you're not trying to teach them how to do that in the moment. But, you know, we all have our 5 senses, obviously, our sight, our smell, our taste, what we hear, what we feel, our touch. Those are our 5 senses. And so when you say we're going to pick each one of those things out in our environment, first, what do you smell? What do you see? What do you hear? Basically what you're doing is you're helping distract that person to think about those other things, so that they're not thinking about whatever it is that they're panicked about, and just enough for them to be able to just calm down for a second and get their breathing and their body back under control. So then we can have a conversation about what's causing them to be panicked.
Yeah, so if you're at school and you can get with a safe social worker, a safe teacher, that would be helpful, a safe friend, to be with someone else who can kind of be with you during that. I think that's great. Sometimes we can't do that, but you can ask those same questions of yourself to try to get back into the present moment. You know, just as Miss Abbott said, what do I smell right now? You know, close your eye, you know, what do I hear? And try to get yourself back down into a really small unit of time. Sometimes it's helpful too to just think, I just need to get through like the next second, then I'm going to get through the next second. So trying to break it down to be a little bit more manageable. We also have a new resource that's been available during COVID times, which is called Call for Calm, and that one's through the state. And people can use that, and that's supposed to connect them with somebody local, but you can just call. I think you can call a few times. It's just called Call for Calm. We can add that to the resource sheet.
Right. Good to know. Okay, I don't see any new questions in the Q&A, so. But obviously, if you're still on the call and you have some additional questions, you've got our email addresses, at least you have mine. Mine is just the district's email address. And if you have a question, you can start with me. And if I don't have the answer, I can direct you to someone who can help. For sure.
Thank you. Thank you again, Kate. Thank you again, Mary, for your time today. There's some thank yous coming in. So we greatly appreciate all the information you shared with us tonight. And to our participants and viewers, thank you for watching, and we'll follow up soon. Have a
Thanks
great
so
night.
much, everyone.
Thank you.